to get to have a conversation with people about something that you're passionate about, and then also, that makes an impression when you can be genuine and have a meaningful interaction with someone without being opportunistic. So yeah, I definitely would wholeheartedly support that.
Yeah, especially if you have like back-to-back meetings throughout the entire day, and they're all pitches, which are wonderful, but also exhausting over time in a similar fashion that pitching an entire day will be exhausting. Having that casual conversation in between can be quite nice, and I try to, if possible, schedule my appointments in that way that every couple of hours I have that chat in between that will just be a little bit different and help me refresh my brain again.
Yeah, because you need to take a break at some point. Like any normal person, in whatever capacity you're involved with in games, at some point, especially like major things like what you just described, Chris, you need to take a break. It's important because otherwise, it's not fair to you, and it's potentially not fair to whoever you're talking to. So,
yeah, 100%.
All right, Mustafa, I'm going to let you kind of kick off this last section here before we close, because I know this is one of your favorites as far as talking about lessons learned.
Yes, I am a sucker for some lessons learned. Now, with everything that we've kind of discussed, and I know there's been plenty of it, do you have any kind of standout stories of successes that you've seen, of devs who've kind of gone along with the advice that you've suggested throughout this discussion?
Generally, yes, for sure. I just want to clarify that some of these developers not necessarily have gone along with my advice because I gave that advice to them, but later on I noticed, wow, okay, they approach a certain conversation or pitch in a specific matter, and therefore had success, which maybe also sort of prove to myself that this advice would be valuable to share. Mm-hmm. I think a very, very good thread that you can see on Twitter that I might be able to find out again and link somewhere is from the Backbone developers. They are published by the wonderful team at Raw Fury, and a couple of weeks ago at this point, if not months ago, time really doesn't make any sense during quarantine, put out a Twitter thread about their pitch deck and how they approach pitching to Raw Fury. And it really... What's really special about the Egna team is how they all come from various different industries and have not previously worked together on a video game. So this phenomenal looking game, and which I'm very much looking forward to, is made by like first time developers, I could say, working with Raw Fury, and has been pitched in a utmost professional manner, as far as I can tell, just looking at the Twitter thread. Not only do their slides look phenomenal, but the way the whole conversation was supposedly approached seems to have gone very well and was very upfront. On the other side, one team that I can very much, of course, highlight, and this may sound a little bit biased, but I just appreciate the way they approached our pitch conversation is Rose City Games. Having had a chat with them in 2019 about Floppy Nights for the first time, it was from the very get-go a very straightforward conversation, a very well-designed pitch deck, and very clearly communicated about sort of what they were looking for in a partnership, not only in terms of potential funding, but other things that come with the publishing deal. And knowing a lot about the development team up front, as Rose City Games had previously been part of the Indie Mega Booth, and I had worked for the Indie Mega Booth, so there was somewhat of a connection up front there. Having this more casual approach to a conversation, and then stumbling upon each other at physical events again and again throughout a couple of days was just the sort of perfect way of transitioning into this publishing experience, I would say. In a digital landscape, there's also certainly good examples. One more recent one that I don't yet want to talk about specifically who it is, since they're currently negotiating with the publisher. It was a development team that was absolutely wonderful, really, really beautiful title, inspiring title, entirely outside of what we're looking for. But the development, and I told them that very upfront through the meeting system, or the matchmaking system, but they still asked to just have a call, talk a little bit about the pitch deck, maybe get some tips. And we ended up connecting them with the publisher, which is one of the publishers that are currently in negotiation with, as far as I've been told most recently. So seeing how people still approach these conversations, just want to have a honest, casual conversation, be very upfront about what they're looking for, I think is a very good development. I don't think anyone has to be shy or careful in expressing what they want out of a relationship. I think it's super important entering a relationship quite honestly and having these digital event opportunities, and expressing your honest opinion about the project that you're working on. Sorry, I lost the strain of thought. I think that's super important, and at the end of the day will help the development team out, will help the publisher or investor or platform owner out, and hopefully will make this industry to a more transparent and honest industry at the end of the day. Something that I feel most people want to see, but we're not quite there yet.
Cool. I mean, and this is actually a question I had prepared, but I think you addressed it a lot in those examples. So I just want to confirm that, in terms of as a publisher, a lot of those things you just described, they seem to have pretty much a positive impact on you in terms of like the fact of how they took advice and then applied it to reach that success. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, awesome. So I want to right before we wrap this up, there's one more, and Mustafa, I'm going to save this one for you too, because from a lesson learned perspective, this is another big one that you care the most about, which I think a lot of people would care the most about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. I mean, we certainly love a magnum opus around here. So is there like a thing that a dev or studio did that had like the biggest impact on you, like the greatest kind of standout story?
That's something that, wow, that's a very, very good question. Give me just a moment to reflect. Quite honestly, yeah, actually, yes. Last year at GDC, I sat down with a development team. Sorry that everything is so focused around pitching, but that's what last year primarily looked like. And they came with a pitch deck that was very simplistic. It had some. It looked like a high school presentation you would put together because you forgot your homework to some degree. Not because of the game assets. The game assets looked wonderful, but just the presentation was very simplistic. Let's put it that way. But the team didn't only convey the humor of the game incredibly well, were super transparent and honest, and took this whole conversation seriously while being transparent in themselves. But they were just so phenomenally in touch with what they were developing, a very humoristic game that just not only surprised me, although I was aware of the development team up front going into this conversation, but just blew my expectations of the game way up, although I had not even gotten a chance to sit down and play the game. Like within that meeting, a lot went wrong. We didn't manage to play the game. It broke twice. It was just sort of a very chaotic meeting overall. Probably didn't help that I selected one of the super flooded Italian restaurants of like around that time frame of the day in downtown San Francisco. But everything that could have gone wrong during that meeting somewhat did go wrong, but the pitch still stood out for being incredibly interesting, incredibly humorous, and very reflective of what of how I felt the development team were in terms of their personalities. That was probably one of my favorite sit down meetings overall, where developers just really blew my expectations in a positive manner.
Yeah, that says a lot, because I think sometimes like just pitching in itself can be pretty nerve-wracking, but and like you said, everything that could have gone wrong did, and you gave some examples as how that came to be. But still, like I think that it's that attitude, and it goes to say that can still have a huge impact, and the fact that you're like, wow, like this could have just really sucked for them, but at the same time, like everybody got the most out of it, and you're talking about it now today, which I think is a good, valuable lesson in terms of always looking forward for those opportunities in moments, even when they suck.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that story in particular, because, you know, sometimes it's hard for people to like get out of a groove when it's a bad one or something. So I think a lot of people can relate to that and use that, like keep that in their back pocket when things aren't going quite to their liking. All right. Well, we covered a lot today, and I was hoping that maybe you could provide a list of 3 to 5 suggestions or tips that you would recommend. I know we kind of scattered them throughout this episode, but if you were to boil it down to those 3 or 5 things, what would those be that you would say, hey, devs, take action with this when you're considering really getting out into the digital landscape in terms of either having an impact on publishers or having an impact during events?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, for me, the way I put it is somewhat of a summary of what we just talked about. Mm-hmm. Obviously, very important, no matter if you're preparing for a game launch, for a digital an event in the digital landscape, pitching to publishers or so on, is come prepared and be very clear in your communication. Transparency is everything. I think as much as you can communicate upfront while not overloading whoever you're talking to, if it's a consumer, if it's a business partner, or potential business partner, whatsoever, then you're doing everything right. Do something different. I just looked up the phrase that I was trying to come up with, and I'm not sure this actually exists in English. This might just be a horrible Google translation. Swim against the current. Maybe you can tell me if that's something an English-speaking would say. Either way, do something different. Just summarizes it perfectly. If an opportunity is presented to you, sure, absolutely take it, but consider how you can stand out from that pool of pitching parties, of exhibiting developers, of individuals, and what will make you be that one standout meeting that everyone has in a hopefully positive way. But overall, be yourself. Any relationship with a consumer, with a business partner, a professional business relationship, of course, will at the end of the day have to be open, and you will have to be yourself. That will otherwise come up at some point, and no one wants to enter a relationship with any sort of dishonesty. Share what you can up front. Again, that sort of comes together with the transparency argument, but it just helps to be very open, and you shouldn't be too afraid of telling a potential business partner about your project. The whole secrecy around titles is in 99% of cases really a little bit too much. Almost no one will ever steal your idea. There have been examples, of course, of literally that happening, but they are incredibly rare that we hear about them maybe once every couple of months at max, at the most. And if you ever need any advice or input, or just want to chat about digital events or pitching to publishers or whatsoever, anything publishing event related, feel free to just hit me up. I have a lot of event opinions at any given time. It's sort of become my hobby. So always happy to just have a chat about it or talk about stuff in my Twitter DMs.
Awesome. So with that being the case, what are the best ways before we close to get in touch with you? Like, your website for those awesome guys. You're on Twitter, obviously. What other means that you'd like to share?
Yeah, Twitter is probably the best. It's Chris Wulf _ because someone took away Chris Wulf. God damn it. A website, we have like a contact email address, but again, you can hit us up at contact@thoseawesomeguys.com for anything more generic or anything that wouldn't really fall into my pool of expertise. And then email wise, again, just ping me on Twitter. I respond as soon as possible, and then we can take it from there. That's usually the easiest way.
All right, cool. And right before we close, I still want to give you a chance. What should people be aware of in terms of, games that you have out there,